On May 1st, 2014, Shadow Fight 2 released to the world and changed gaming forever. With over 100 million downloads, Shadow Fight 2 became one of the best-selling games of all time. So naturally the question is, how did this masterpiece come to be, you might ask?
We didn't ask.
Ignoring that fact that nobody asked for this information, here's how a small game studio ended up creating arguably the greatest mobile fighting game ever made. It's 2010 and mobile games are starting to explode. Neki, a small Russian studio, decides to seize the opportunity releasing Shadow Fight 1 on Facebook. You see, back in the day, almost all of the biggest mobile games were made using Adobe Flash, a browser plugin that let developers make interactive games without people needing to download anything. You had your Farmville, Mafia Wars, Candy Crush, and for the weirdos, Top Girl. All these games were played on Facebook. They were designed as casual check-in experiences rather than massive time commitments. Among those games was Shadow Fight 1. Now, mobile hardware back then was terrible. The first iPhone was basically the modern equivalent of my toaster. But because Neki wanted realistic motion-captured martial arts animations, they had a problem. Phones at that time couldn't properly handle detailed 3D models without moving at a smooth 5 frames per second. So instead of sacrificing the animations, they sacrificed literally everything else. Colors? Gone. Textures? Overrated. Okay. And somehow that limitation ended up creating one of the most recognizable art styles, or lack thereof, in modern gaming. At its peak, Shadow Fight had 40 active million players. So with their newfound success, Neki decided to make Shadow Fight 2. It featured smoother animations, beautiful background art, RPG progression, and somehow found a way to turn the black silhouettes into actual lore. But we'll get into that later. Now, unlike most modern studios, Neki didn't have billions of dollars for some giant marketing campaign, so pretty much all of the game's growth was organic. Kids would go to school telling their friends about the new fighting game they found, sharing combos and collectively losing their minds trying to beat Hermit. And the craziest part? You got all this gameplay for the low price of free. Now yes, the game had microtransactions, but for the most part, you could finish the game without spending a single dime. Sure, the energy system made you wait after every few fights for what felt like 17 business days. It was the perfect opportunity to go outside for once. But to add to the game's greatness, it actually had a story.
Okay.
Once I was a great, invincible warrior, until the demons of the other world were beyond them. They rushed upon me, tearing my flesh, draining my soul, turning me into a shadow.
You see, unlike the usual puzzle games like Candy Crush or endless run-ons like Subway Surfers, Shadow Fight 2 actually had lore around each of the characters and bosses you encountered. Without spoiling anything, characters like Sensei, who helped Shadow remember his fighting techniques, Fun fact, Shadow's real name is Kaginoko? Kaginoko. You didn't ask, but the more you know. Then there's Mei, who is Shadow's companion and weapons expert. And Kid, who after seeing Shadow's sick moves, becomes his sparring partner and replaces the usual punching bag you find in the dojo.
He's someone that you know and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
And that's one of the weirdly cool things about this game. Even the training dummy has an actual role in the world. It's small, but it makes everything feel a bit more alive. Then we have the single greatest aspect of the game's story, the bosses. Isn't there technically 6 aspects, and like 35 if you count the bodyguards and assassins? Well, since I don't want this video turning out to be a 3-hour documentary, I'll briefly be focusing on the 7 main bosses. There's Lynx. This Wolverine wannabe is a narcissistic leader of a deadly assassin organization called the Order, who famously blows you up with time bombs, so that's fun. Armit, who shouldn't be taken lightly. This elderly menace is a highly intelligent martial arts teacher who runs his own fighting school, and he made magic apparently. Oh, no wonder we hated him. Butcher, the ruthless leader of a gang that kidnaps children and raises them to blindly loyal criminals and bodyguards. And he's also fat. Wasp, the daughter of the Pirate King and servant of the Demon Widow. But honestly, she might be the least memorable one here. Widow, a sorcerer who was betrayed and humiliated by the Prince of Ivory City, leading her to basically declare war on all men. Using magic and manipulation, she turns countless men into loyal servants. But Shadow, being the absolute brick wall that he is completely unaffected by her charm. And finally, Shogun. The biggest fraud in the game. Originally the top general and loyal protector of the city's ruler, the prince, he gets manipulated by the widow, assassinates the prince, takes the throne, and conquers the surrounding nations. But in an actual fight, he doesn't even fight alone. Like seriously, resorting to jumping, I expected better.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck?
And honestly, the story in this game was really good. I mean, it's no Breaking Bad or anything.
You're goddamn right.
But for a mobile fighting game, it's a win in my book. Now this is usually the part where YouTubers start ranting about how the newer Shadow Fight games aren't good. But I'm not really into that. I'm just gonna talk about what I liked and didn't from the other games. Shadow Fight 3 was peak in its own way. It had a more confusing, but also more interesting story. Insane customization, new 3D characters, and completely new shadow abilities. Sure, the old art style we knew and loved was gone, but they still kept shadow energy and expanded the combat animations from the previous game. The backgrounds looked great, and the music, in my opinion, was just as good as Shadow Fight 2. For reference, listen to this. Then this. It's straight gas. The only thing I never really liked was that it was an always online experience. And there's Shadow Fight 4. Yeah, I'm not really a fan. Unlike the previous game, where the narrative was still a big focus, Arena leans heavily into the multiplayer experience. The story feels like it was thrown together last minute just to give longtime fans something familiar. And hey, if you like it, good for you, but I just didn't. It felt more like I was playing something like Candy Crush or Subway Surfers. Extremely addictive, but no real payoff. The music though, it's still great. The last game in the Shadow Fight franchise is Shades. And I freaking love this game. And yeah, I know it's a bit of nostalgia bait, but honestly, who cares? The game's great. The fighting mechanics, heavy impact, the classic movesets, all return. But it also brings something new to the table. It's a direct sequel to Shadow Fight 2, exploring what happens after Shadow defeats Titan. It introduces roguelike mechanics, where you pick up one of 3 randomized power-ups called Shades between rounds. It's a bit less linear than SF2, and more like gambling your way through each run, but the classic music, stage themes, and visual style brings back that old 2012 vibe. I never really told you why I made this video. Back in 2019, my parents took me and my siblings to Kenya while they attended a conference. They couldn't really afford to pay for us to attend, so we were basically stuck waiting in the cafeteria with my dad's phone. And that's where it happened. Me and my brother ended up grinding Shadow Fight 2 for the entire week. We mastered survival mode to the point where I could beat all 10 rounds without any gear. And looking back, that game gave me some of my best memories. Not because it was the best game ever made, but because no game since then has been able to recreate that feeling. You might not agree that Shadow Fight 2 was the best mobile game ever made, but to me, no other game will ever come close. And I guess that's the thing about games like Shadow Fight 2. They don't need to be perfect to mean something. Well, thanks for watching, and remember, stay non-playable.
Please, Pete, I need this. My mom is kind of homeless. I live with my dad. I want to help her out.